The world woke to a shockwave, not an earthquake, but a declaration from Beijing. Overnight, the ordinary rhythm of global affairs was shattered. Newsrooms across continents buzzed with urgency, as anchors interrupted regular programming to deliver the breaking story. The world, it seemed, was suddenly united by a single chilling headline. As dawn broke in Manila, the city was bathed in a golden light, but the mood was anything but calm. Headlines blared. China declares historical and indisputable sovereignty over all territories within 9-dash line, warns of decisive action against Philippine provocations. The words leapt from newspapers and screens, echoing through the city's streets and alleys, stirring a mix of fear, anger, and disbelief. Global markets plunged in response, with investors fearing the worst. World leaders scrambled to convene emergency meetings, their faces grave as they weighed the risks of escalation. On social media, hashtags supporting the Philippines trended worldwide, as millions voiced solidarity and concern, sharing stories, prayers, and calls for peace. In Manila, the crisis felt deeply personal. Coffee shops that usually buzzed with morning chatter fell silent, as patrons stared at their phones in disbelief. Teachers paused mid-lesson, struggling to find words to reassure their students. At home, families gathered around televisions, their faces etched with worry, wondering what the future would hold for their children. The West Philippine Sea was no longer just a distant blue expanse on a map. It had become a living symbol of pride, livelihood, and sovereignty. For generations, its waters had provided food, work, and identity to countless Filipinos. Now, it was at the heart of a global crisis, its waves carrying the hopes and fears of a nation. The government rushed into emergency meetings, the halls of Malacanang echoing with urgent voices and hurried footsteps. Security tightened around the capital, and the usually bustling streets grew eerily quiet. Yet, the real impact of the crisis was felt far from the corridors of power, in the everyday lives of ordinary people. Military analysts pored over satellite images, pointing to a growing naval presence in the contested waters. On television, commentators debated fiercely. Was this the prelude to war, or a high-stakes negotiation tactic? The uncertainty was as thick as the humid Manila air, and every new development was dissected in real time. For the fishermen at sea, the news hadn't reached them yet. As the sun rose, they went about their daily routines, mending nets and casting lines, just as their ancestors had done for centuries. The sea was their home, their heritage, and their lifeline, unaware that in distant capitals their future was being debated. Unaware, they cast their nets into the familiar waters, unaware that a distant capital had just declared their home off limits. The ocean, calm and endless, gave no hint of the storm brewing on the horizon. The world watched, breath held, as a small nation stood in the shadow of a giant. Crowds gathered around outdoor televisions, their faces tense and anxious. International journalists reported live from Manila, their voices echoing in dozens of languages. As the crisis dominated headlines from New York to London to Tokyo, the tension was palpable, the stakes immense. Every Filipino felt the weight of history pressing down, as if the entire nation was holding its breath, waiting for the next move. The South China Sea had become the world's most dangerous flashpoint overnight. Naval ships maneuvered near contested islands, and newsrooms displayed crisis maps, tracing the lines that now divided not just nations, but families and futures. The next move would shape not just borders, but the fate of millions. In the streets, children played, unaware of the storm above, while parents watched the news, searching for hope in a sea of uncertainty. And for the Philippines, the fight was suddenly at their doorstep. Soldiers guarded city streets, protesters waved flags in defiance, and a nation braced itself for whatever would come next, united, anxious, and unbowed. In a move that sent shockwaves across continents, Beijing's declaration redrew the map, boldly claiming nearly the entire South China Sea as its own. The announcement was not just a statement of intent, it was a seismic shift in the region's balance of power, instantly raising tensions and uncertainty. With a single stroke, the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, waters that had long been the lifeblood of its coastal communities, was erased from the map, replaced by sweeping Chinese claims that overlapped traditional fishing grounds and vital shipping lanes. The language from Beijing was blunt and uncompromising, dismissing the 2016 Hague ruling as nothing more than waste paper. International law, it seemed, was brushed aside with a wave of the hand, as Chinese officials doubled down on their position. The declaration came with a chilling warning. China would take all necessary measures against any Philippine vessels entering what it now called its waters. The message was clear: resistance would be met with force. Global headlines erupted, calling it China's boldest move yet, a direct and open challenge to the international order. Around the world, governments scrambled to respond, analysts debated the implications, and ordinary people watched with growing unease. Across Asia, neighboring countries saw a dangerous precedent unfolding before their eyes. If China could claim these waters, what would stop it from reaching further? Fear spread that their own maritime boundaries could be next. China's statement was not an isolated act. It was the culmination of years of island building, military expansion, and relentless harassment of Filipino fishermen, an escalation that had slowly but surely changed the face of the sea. This time, there was no pretense of negotiation or compromise, just a formal, unapologetic claim, delivered with the full weight of the Chinese state. For Filipinos, the 9-dash line was no longer an abstract line on a map. It had become a cage, hemming in their future and threatening their way of life. The sea is woven into Filipino identity, a source of food, history, and pride. Generations have depended on its bounty, and its loss would be a wound felt in every home. China's claim wasn't just about territory, it was about erasing a part of who they are. For many, it felt like an attack on their heritage, their dignity, and their right to exist as a people of the sea. The world shuddered at the dragon's roar. In capitals from Washington to Tokyo, leaders weighed their options, knowing that the consequences could reshape the region for generations. In the Philippines, defiance and anxiety mixed in every heart. Some called for resistance, others for diplomacy, but all felt the gravity of the moment. The stakes had never been higher. The world watched, holding its breath, as a new chapter in the struggle for the South China Sea began. Before the first light of dawn touches the horizon, fishermen in Zambales and Palawan quietly gather along the shore. They prepare their small wooden boats, checking nets and supplies, their movements practiced and precise, shaped by years of experience. The salty air is filled with anticipation, and the low murmur of voices, as families lend a hand before the men set out to sea. Here, fishing is more than just a job. It's a tradition, a way of life passed down from father to son, generation after generation. Young boys learn from their elders, watching and helping, absorbing the skills and stories that have sustained their families for centuries. For these communities, the West Philippine Sea is not just a body of water. It is their lifeblood, their source of food and income, a place woven into their identity. To them, it is not a political battleground, but a living, breathing part of their daily existence. In the past, they fished freely, guided by the rhythms of the tides and the wisdom of their ancestors. The sea was open, generous, and familiar, a place where hard work was rewarded and danger was simply part of the adventure. But now, the horizon is shadowed by the presence of Chinese Coast Guard ships. Their arrival has changed everything, turning each fishing trip into a tense gamble, where safety and livelihood are never guaranteed. Water cannons, blockades, and constant surveillance have transformed the once peaceful sea into a place of fear and uncertainty. Every encounter with these patrols is a reminder of the risks the fishermen face just to do their work. The catches have dwindled, not because the fish are gone, but because access to traditional fishing grounds is now restricted. The nets come up emptier, and the faces of the fishermen reflect growing frustration and worry. This hardship doesn't end at sea, it ripples through entire villages. Empty nets mean less food on the table, less income to support families, and a growing sense of uncertainty about the future. Mothers worry, elders remember better days, and everyone feels the strain. Even the children sense the change. They watch their fathers leave each morning with new fear in their eyes, hoping for their safe return and for a good catch, but knowing that both are no longer certain. The sea, once a symbol of hope and abundance, now brings anxiety and scarcity. Storms and patrols alike threaten the fragile balance of their lives. Yet despite these challenges, the fishermen remain determined. Their fight is not just for fish, but for the survival of their culture, their families, and their way of life. In community meetings, they share stories, strategies, and support, refusing to give up. Every journey out to sea is an act of quiet resistance, a statement that they will not be driven away from the waters that have always been theirs. The front line here is not marked by trenches or barbed wire, but by a stretch of water their ancestors called home. For these fishermen, the struggle continues, day after day, as they hold on to hope and to the legacy of the sea. The Philippines' response is rooted in centuries of struggle against foreign powers. From Spanish and American colonizers to Japanese invaders, Filipinos have always fought for sovereignty. Heroes like Rizal and Bonifacio inspired a nation to resist, forging a deep love for independence. Today, Chinese ships are seen as the latest in a long line of intruders. The fight for Scarborough Shoal is about dignity, not just territory. Every act of defiance, whether in courtrooms or on fishing boats, echoes the spirit of generations who refuse to be conquered. At the heart of the conflict is the 9-dash line, a sweeping claim that cuts through the waters of Southeast Asia. China's strategy is relentless: patrols, harassment, and the transformation of reefs into military outposts. Filipino fishermen face massive Chinese ships and swarms of maritime militia, making traditional fishing grounds inaccessible. The 9-dash line defies international law, challenging the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. China's historic rights claim attempts to override the legal rights of its neighbors. The world watches, knowing this is more than a local dispute. It's a test: will law or brute force decide the future of the seas? The answer will echo far beyond these waters. Outmatched at sea, the Philippines fought in court. In 2013, they brought China to the Permanent Court of Arbitration, challenging the 9-dash line under UNCLOS. The case was a David versus Goliath battle, with Filipino fishermen's stories at its heart. China refused to participate, but the tribunal pressed on. In 2016, the ruling was clear. China's claims had no legal basis, and its actions violated Philippine rights. The world hailed the decision, but China ignored it. With no way to enforce the ruling, Chinese ships stayed, and sometimes grew bolder. For the Philippines, it was a moral victory, but the sea remained dangerous. The law was on their side, but reality had not changed. The struggle continued, both on paper and on the water. For coastal communities, the conflict is about survival, not strategy. Fishermen who once thrived now return with empty nets, unable to feed their families. Economic hardship forces children out of school and erodes traditions passed down for generations. Young people leave for work in cities or abroad, breaking the chain of heritage. The sea, once central to village life, becomes a memory of better days. Stories of sacrifice abound: a father pawning his wife's ring for medicine, a daughter giving up college for her siblings. These are not headlines, they are the quiet tragedies of the 9-dash line. The cost is paid by those least able to bear it. Their struggle is the true price of this geopolitical game. The Philippines fights back with truth, dignity, and the law. Coast Guard patrols now double as chroniclers, recording every act of harassment and aggression. Videos and photos expose China's actions to the world, cutting through propaganda. This transparency has won global respect and rallied international support. Diplomats invoke the arbitral ruling, while journalists and fishermen keep the story alive. Every documented incident is a blow for justice. The fight is waged not with force, but with facts and courage. The West Philippine Sea story is one of resilience. Filipino strength is found in the fisherman who returns to sea, the mother who makes do, and the child who still dreams. This is a nation that values peace, but will not yield its rights. True power lies in unity, conviction, and the rule of law. The world may watch the headlines, but the real story is written in daily acts of hope and dignity. The fight is far from over, but the Filipino spirit endures. They will continue to sail, to hope, and to stand proud. For them, sovereignty is not just a word, it is their identity, their future, and their unbreakable bond to the sea.